Hi there, it's Colette, and in this episode I welcome back Ayurvedic Doctor Victor Briere, who's going to talk to us about Pitta Burnout. What happens when Pitta becomes aggravated? What causes the aggravation? What are the signs and symptoms? And what we can do to balance Pitta again. So please stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Elements of Ayurveda, Empowering Wisdom of Life. I'm your host, Colette, and in this podcast, I hope to empower you to take charge of your own health by sharing the holistic teachings of Ayurveda, the ancient healing tradition from India. We will also discuss topics like health and wellness, nutrition, yoga, fitness, meditation, breath work, and much more, as well as interviewing lots of inspiring people along the way. My humble wish is to help you to connect to your true nature, to Mother Nature, and to each other. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe to the show, and the new episodes will automatically download for you to enjoy. If you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend you listen to the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. I've also set up a Facebook group for us to connect and to support each other, and I'd love for you to join me over at Elements of Ayurveda podcast group. And now here's the show. Hello and welcome to Elements of Ayurveda. Today I'm happy to welcome back Ayurvedic Doctor Victor Briere from Pacific Coast Ayurveda. Now I talked with Dr. Victor back in episode number 91, and that was on addiction and the vagus nerve. But today we're going to talk about Pitta Burnout. So hello, Dr. Victor, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Colette?
I'm very well. And I am really looking forward to getting into this discussion today because you don't know this, but I am actually the poster child, or was the poster child, for Pitta Burnout back in the day, which is how I came to Ayurveda.
Perfect.
Yeah.
As so many do.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I was just exercising way too much and had a yoga and fitness studio and was just doing, all that Pitta competitiveness and Ironman and competition. And it was just complete burnout, and it ended up just having to stop everything. So yes, I have some to share, and I'm looking forward to your information that you have to share on this today. And this is, I think, is a perfect time to discuss it right at the end of summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, where we have this accumulation of heat, of Pitta in the body. So there is more of a tendency for Pitta aggravation right now as well. I guess let's start, Victor, with an intro to Pitta, like a Pitta 101 for people who are still getting to know Ayurveda. If you could start there, I think that would be great.
Okay. Pitta 101.
Mm-hmm.
The Pittas who are listening to this will cruise through this very quickly, or at least they will think that they cruise through it very quickly, because Pittas are very sharp by nature. There is a portion of Pitta that controls discernment, intellect, and just the general capacity to grasp things and break them down. That is Pitta in its essence. And that exists on the physical body metabolic level, and when it comes to breaking down food, whatnot. And it also comes to the mental level, or the level of the gunas, which is an Ayurvedic term, of taking information, organizing it very quickly, breaking it into its constituent parts, and then the capacity to reorganize it into something new. And that's what Pittas love to do most of all. They love to take anything that comes in, break it down, reorganize it as they see fit, and put it out into the world as something better than it was before. That is the essential quality of Pitta. And Pittas, people who have a lot of Pitta in their constitution, are obsessed with doing that to a fault. And it is both their wonderful gift and their Achilles heel in life. So Pitta 101 continued would be when we look at someone's constitution, we look to see what the doshas are like and how they're acting in that person's constitution. So there's Pitta, Vata, and Kapha. Pitta is the dosha that is a combination of the two elemental forces of fire and water. So in Ayurveda, we often talk about things as elements. Of course, we don't literally mean fire in your body. We do literally mean water in your body. Mm-hmm. But we're talking mainly about the qualities that these elements possess. So fire is sharp, it consumes, it spreads, it has all these qualities. Water connects things, it flows, etc. And so when you combine all those qualities, you get a dosha. And in the case of the Pitta dosha, it's dominantly the fire qualities and subdominantly the water qualities, which, making a long story short, gets you acid.
Right.
That combines the qualities of fire and water. It's got the breakdown, consumption, spreading qualities of fire, and it's got the fluidity qualities of water. So pittas are ruled by acid, basically. And that's what governs their metabolic system, which is the primary system in their body. And they tend to run high on heat and acid. So if you're born with a pitta dominant constitution, you are just naturally going to have a tendency to run hot and acidic without any extra anything added.
Right. And so therefore you have to be very sensitive, not only with diet, but also with lifestyle, not to aggravate that tendency further.
Right. And of course, as a general rule in Ayurveda, with all the doshas, not just pitta, but what we are in our nature, we tend to crave, at least when we're out of balance or start to be out of balance. So pittas crave more pitta in general. Mm-hmm. That's not a universal standard, but in general, that's what happens. So you see pittas wanting to amplify their pitta nature by drinking very hot acidic drinks, by eating very spicy foods, and by living a lifestyle that's burn and churn, so to speak.
Right. A lot of intensity in their work life and in their competition. They love competition, right? And that competitive edge and intensity may come into their workouts and so on.
Absolutely. They love competition. They love focus. Mm-hmm. They love performance. They love perfection. Mm-hmm. They love destruction as well. Even those that don't like to admit it. To fuel those intense desires and those intense urges and actions, they like to create a lot of heat and acid, because that's what, when you take food and put it in your stomach and the acid breaks it down, in the breakdown of that nutrition, you get energy. Mm-hmm. Energy gets in the form of heat. Right. And pittas love that. They love that whole process.
Yeah, so you mentioned there the love of destruction, but how would that show up?
Anger, on a more extreme thing would be violence. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess it's not that extreme. We live in a pretty violent world. So those are all pitta-driven things. War, basically. Yeah. That competitive edge gone very negative and to an extreme, to the point of, forgetting the humanity involved in the competition and just wanting to take someone down. Right. And the power that comes with that.
Sure. So we're seeing a lot of that play out today in the world in general. And so obviously that goes hand in hand too with the Rajasic mindset. So the Rajas being the mental quality, the mental guna. So how does Pitta and Rajas connect?
Pitta by nature is Rajasic. Mm-hmm. And Rajas in Ayurveda is a term, like as you said, that describes a mental quality. And that's the mental quality of agitation or freneticism. The constant desire to vibrate or move. And that has wonderful advantages as long as it's controlled by another guna, which is called sattva. And sattva is the guna that deals with clarity and purity and kind of just balance in general. So Rajas is good when it's used appropriately, but when it goes out of hand or remains unchecked, then it creates this unending oscillation in life that doesn't allow for rest, doesn't allow for recuperation. It's a constant usage of energy, no replenishment of energy. That's tamas, which is the opposite of rajas, and that's what allows for the replenishment of something.
Right. So like you said, we need some rajas quality for stimulation, for acceleration, to give us that spark and that edge and that get up and go. But when it becomes aggravated, then it can lead to problems. So I guess we've talked about the tendencies of Pitta now, and thank you for that Pitta 101. It was fantastic. And we talked about what leads to Pitta aggravation. So maybe we'll talk about now what are the signs of a Pitta aggravation?
Your first signs of a Pitta aggravation are typically going to be psychological. So before it hits your body and manifests as a physical disease, you're going to start seeing certain behavioral tendencies. Amongst those would be anger. And now I don't mean, there's definitely healthy anger, but I mean a imbalanced expression of anger or the feeling of constant irritation. Yeah. That's usually a very early sign that Pitta is beginning to become imbalanced in the system. The light switch gets left on when it's supposed to be turned off. And sure, you might have a moment of like, oh, that's so annoying, right? I've asked this person to turn off the light switch 50 times. But if that is happening all over the place all the time with everything, 20, 30 times a day, where everything's grinding your gears, everything's like nails on a chalkboard to you, then you're experiencing Pitta increasing, probably because there's been a lot of bottling up of anger.
Right.
Or because you're just running too hot. Many people notice, especially Pittas, on a hot day, people are much more irritable much more quickly. That's simply because the dosha of Pitta has that nature to it and it's running high in the system. And so it expresses itself through the personality.
Right, exactly.
So that's one sign. Another sign is rashes. If someone's getting rashes, that's a sign that there's an imbalance in the blood, and that imbalance is frequently caused by Pitta or has an association with Pitta. Acid reflux is an early sign of a looming deeper Pitta imbalance. And I'm trying to think of a few other things in the personality that, any kind of like obsessive, I don't want to say obsessive compulsive disorder. That's a pretty heavy syndrome, but any kind of, if you start noticing yourself becoming obsessed with details, more than just, not when you're not able to let it go.
Right. There's perfectionism coming in as well.
Yeah, exactly. Or okay, I'm going to stay at the office. I'm going to ignore my family life. I'm going to ignore my health because I need all this paperwork done. So I'm staying in the office till 1 a.m.
Right.
I have to have it done. I have to have it organized at the expense of more important things. Those are all early warnings that Pitta is getting way too high. And if this pattern continues, it's going to move on to the next phase of disease.
Right, exactly. And Pitta wanting to achieve at the expense, like you were saying, not only of family life or social life, but also of their own health. Yeah,
definitely. And Pittas have that ability, and in our culture, they're rewarded for that ability.
Right.
So
exactly.
They have this ability to push through pain, to push through hardship, which can be a wonderful quality. But when it's used all the time and when it just becomes part of someone's character to the point where that's how they make their way through the world, and then they get financially rewarded or socially rewarded for exhibiting that behavior over and over and over, then they are walking down a road in which they're basically saying, I'm looking for these rewards and I'm willing to sacrifice my health to do it.
Right, exactly. And there is this real no pain, no gain attitude.
Oh, absolutely. Pittas love that kind of attitude. They think people who experience pain and shy away are sissies.
Right. Right.
Right.
Exactly. And, it's hard to see, coming from my own experience, it's very hard to see it when you're in it. I remember going to a doctor when I was starting to get into that Pitta burnout, and she was saying, well, you're working out too much. You're excited. I was like, no, I'm not. Just like, I just couldn't even face it. So it can be hard for a Pitta person to even step back and review it. And I think because this Rajasic quality, this Rajasic guna comes in and mentally can't see it or won't see it.
Yeah, I think the won't see it is the key because Pittas are very invested in being right.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, because they usually are.
Right. Well, it's definitely their way or the highway sometimes.
Yeah, that's the key word, is that because of this incredible intelligence that they possess and this ability to discern and this ability to create results, because they do that and shape the world and change the world, 90% of the time they are right. But that 10% is what gets them. Right.
And also it's knowing how to deliver as well, because if they have this this intensity and this Pitta aggravation, when they're delivering that information that, like you said, is probably well researched and correct, but it can also come with a sharpness, right? Which is a quality of a Pitta. It's that very sharp tone, very direct, no beating around the bush, straight to the point.
Yeah, there's one of my Ayurvedic teachers told me that the whole game for Pitta, someone with a Pitta dominant constitution, their big spiritual lesson in life is to learn how to go from being a judgmental person to a compassionate person.
Yeah, huge.
That's their whole evolution.
Yeah,
that dosha, because you're right. The delivery is so sharp and it's so aggressive and it can be so direct because there's an underlying irritation and frustration with the fact that the world's not changing fast enough. Things aren't going their way fast enough.
Right.
So just shut up, do what I say, and I'll do better than you can.
It's so true. And the poor, gentle kapha person who comes into that Pitta fire is just burnt. I imagine like a dragon spewing fire when a Pitta person's aggravated and that poor kapha is, being compassionate, and they just get burnt to a crisp with this sharp tongue.
Yeah, exactly. And the beauty in that is that's the negative interaction between a Pitta and a kapha, right? Is the Pitta and just like, oh my God, you lazy oaf, get off the couch and do something with your life, Right. And the kapha person just looks at them, gets kind of sad and says, oh man, I wish you could be a nicer person.
Yeah.
And so that's a negative. But the positive is when you get a Pitta and a kapha in a relationship and they're exhibiting their more positive sides, then the kapha person can really be a good anchor to the Pitta and say, hey, you need to slow down and nurture yourself. And the Pitta person can look at the kapha person and say, you need to get up and start moving now.
Right. It's such a great balance.
Such a great balance. And we could see that in ourselves. And it gets expressed in relationship as well.
Absolutely. And then for the Vata experience, now that we're discussing the other doshas and the interaction, the Vata person would just drive an aggravated Pitta person crazy because they're just buzzing around and unfocused.
And I'll tell you what the number one thing is. A Pitta person's ready to kill someone who doesn't show up. Yes. And a Vata person's guaranteed not to show up on time.
Right. Right. I'm telling you, it helped me so much when I learned these constitutions, and I learned, being dominant Pitta, but I do have the kapha coming in. But when I learned that, so they're not just not showing up on time to piss me off. It's actually just the way they are in the world. That was huge. That saved so many relationships.
Yeah. And there's a secret, there's an Ayurvedic secret enmeshed in all these doshic relationships. And Pittas are good in the kitchen. They like fire, and they like that process of cooking. And the single best thing for a Vata to experience for their own health is to get cooked for. Because even less than Pittas, even more so than Pittas, they need that extra kapha nurturing love.
Yeah.
So one way a Pitta can resolve a relationship with a Vata is by cooking lunch for them.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's a really good dynamic for the two different types to play in. So leave the Vata person out of the kitchen, let them sit at the table, the Pitta control everything they want to inside the kitchen, and have a beautiful, perfectly organized kitchen.
Right.
And passionately serve the Vata lunch.
Yeah, I know. I'm chuckling away here because I just think it's hilarious. But when we have this understanding, this is why I think it's so important for us to understand these tendencies from a young age, because it just would solve so much problems and in the communication between each other and so on. And yeah, it would solve so much if we just understood each other from a young age and understood these different dosha tendencies.
Yeah, definitely. It would make a big difference.
Absolutely. Well, that was great. I think it's really good to understand these signs of pitta aggravation. And also, like I mentioned earlier, you know, now in the Northern Hemisphere, we're at the end of summer. So you may be experiencing a lot of people with this pitta aggravation because we have this accumulation of heat in the body right now.
Oh, yeah. And the transition between seasons, you know, the first 2-3 weeks of the new season and the last 2-3 weeks of the old season, so there's about a month-long period of season transition, is the time where people are most susceptible to get ill.
Right.
Because of all the changes in the environment and the body's adaptation to those changes. Everything needs to move and change, and within that change, there's some instability in the constitution.
Right. So it's really important at this time to do the seasonal cleansing that we talk about a lot in Ayurveda.
Seasonal cleansing, and in this season, like you said, between summer and fall, specifically you want to cleanse excess pitta from the system. Because the fall season is ruled by vata, and vata is characterized in fall by the dryness quality.
Right.
And so if you have all this built up heat and acidity in the body, and then the tissues start to dry out, and you lose your oils and liquids and stuff like that, or they lessen, then the tissue becomes much more susceptible to be damaged by that acid because it's losing some measure of its protective membranes.
Yeah.
So you really want to make sure to get that excess pitta out of the system before fall really sets in, because no matter what constitution you are, you're going to dry out at least a little bit.
Right. And so could you share some tips with us about what people can do at this time of year to pacify pitta, please? And this is if you're at the end of the hot season, right, in the Northern Hemisphere.
Right, correct. At the end of the hot season. You want to increase, so you got to strike a balance between cooling yourself off, but more than cooling yourself off, you want to kind of eliminate excess acidity in the system. So the best way to do that is to do what's called a Virechana in Ayurveda. That takes some guidance from an Ayurvedic practitioner, doctor, counselor, or someone who knows all that. You basically modify what you eat. You eat a much lighter diet for a period of 3 days to a week, and you take some medicated ghee, full ghee, in proportions that are based off whatever that professional assesses in you. And then you do a mild bowel purge. So you either triphala, or you take castor oil, or there are many herbs that have an effect like that. And you basically spend a day having some bowel movements. And what that does is it encourages the body to take whatever excess pitta is hanging around in the GI tract, especially the upper GI tract, and move it through the body and eliminate it through the bowels. Right.
And the ghee, being the cleansing agent, is really helping to not only help the body regain that fat, benefiting that drying, but it's also helping to chelate out those fat-soluble toxins.
Exactly. And ghee in general is pitta pacifying.
Right.
Yeah, just the quality of ghee itself.
Exactly. Great. Also, this time of the year, nature is providing us with food to help flush out that heat as well, because now we have the apples coming in, and apple season, which are wonderful, right, for getting rid of the excess heat. They cause loose stools if you eat a specific quantity of them, and helping to purge the heat out as well.
Yeah, apples are perfect. Apples are great for pitta because by their nature they're cooling, yet they increase metabolic function. They have kind of a special quality there. And that is wonderful for pittas because it engages their strongest characteristic, which is their metabolism, while cooling the system down and balancing the metabolism. And also pears. Pears are really great.
Great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think it's best to stew them like an applesauce or stewed apples or pears with a little ghee, because that will make it even easier to digest. And again, you have the fat content of the ghee.
Yeah, that's a wonderful recipe, simple recipe that tastes wonderful. And you can add some cardamom to that and top it off. And it's great. It's that's a fantastic food for pittas to eat. They can eat that once a day if they wanted to during this season.
Great. So what other tips would you have in regards to a person with a high pitta, or for anyone, like you said, at this stage, everyone's going to have a little bit of pitta and some drying in the body now with the end of the hot season. What other tips would you give to people?
I'm always a huge fan of pranayama. We talked about that in the last podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But there's a specific pranayama called Shitali pranayama. And that can be done by Pitta constitutions. You don't need to do tons of it during the fall season, because fall season you'll just, as the season moves on, you'll just cool off naturally. But basically, you curl your tongue into the shape of a taco. You inhale through your tongue as long and deep as possible, and you exhale through your nostrils. And you'll feel that this cool air runs over your tongue and into your lungs, and it literally cools down your system. It has a bunch of effects. It's in almost every yogic tradition. You can do tons of reading on it. But Shitali means cooling, basically. And if you can't curl your tongue like a taco, then you can pucker your lips and inhale the air through the puckered lips, and it has the same effect.
I actually have a little tutorial I'll add into the show notes on that, because that pranayama is so effective, because you have this cooling air coming in across the tongue, and then you have the heated air coming out the nose. It's just really very effective and so simple.
Yeah, I mean, you'll feel the whole difference in your entire system after 3 breaths.
Right.
It's amazing how quickly it works. A few other tips is just making sure that you don't want to fall for the trick of, I need to cool off, so let me eat and drink really cold things.
Yes.
That never works the way we wish it did. So what you want to do is stick to food and drink that, while the temperature of the food and drink might be room temperature or warmer or hot, the qualities of the actual foods, and what that means is their effect that they have on your system after you digest them, is cooling. So, hibiscus tea, for example, jasmine tea, cucumber juice, all these things are cooling in nature.
Great. Coconut water.
Coconut water, exactly.
Yeah, just obviously be sure it's just natural. And mint is cooling, but there is an activating or energizing effect with mint. I guess it depends on, like peppermint will be more energizing, right? Just thinking at this time of year as we're going into Vata season.
Yeah, mint is, I would say in general, it's pretty good to use. You don't want to go and drink like 2-3 cups of mint tea a day. That can be too hard for the stomach lining, because that energizing quality of mint is the sharpness quality of mint. Right. Mint is cooling, but it's also sharp and penetrating. And that's a real thing. So when it goes into your body, it literally, in a minor way, cuts and penetrates membranes.
Right.
And that can be wonderful if you have a buildup of too much mucus, on and on. But if you have, like, for example, an ulcer, you already have too much of that quality in your stomach. So you want to avoid something like mint.
Right. And then there's different types of mint. The peppermint will be probably more sharp and more energizing and penetrating than a softer spearmint.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So maybe if you have pitta aggravation and you want mint, having more the softer spearmint type would be probably best for you. Because I do find some peppermint teas can be pretty intense. Yeah,
definitely. And depending on the potency and everything like that.
Right. Great. And so other things to avoid, we talked about the heavily spiced, pungent foods, and nightshades, of course, can be very aggravating for pitta as well.
Yeah, nightshades, anything that produces an inflammatory response in the body. Pittas are like bombs waiting to go off. And they have this very this quality of being highly effective. often are wound a bit tight
Yeah.
and ready to blow.
Yeah.
And that includes the action of their immune system. It's pretty strong in the sense that it can fight off a lot of things, but it's also very ready to go to war. So something comes in the body and, it's like, ooh, that looks suspicious. Let's kill it. As opposed to more of a kapha immune system, which is like, if it acts up, we'll take care of it. So pittas like to act fast and act strong and act quick. So nightshade has things in it that create some irritation in the linings and in the body. And a pitta type immune system is going to shoot first and ask questions later.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, they have a tendency to inflame easily because inflammation is ruled by that immune system response.
Right. So anything with itis, for people who are thinking, what's inflammation? Anything with itis at the end of it is inflammation and ruled by pitta.
For the most part, there are vata type inflammation and kapha type inflammation as well.
True.
But most of the time in our world, if someone's got an itis, exactly, that's a great way of saying it, then there's a pitta behind the itis.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So other foods. Well, let's list out nightshades for people who are not familiar. So you would have tomatoes and eggplant, white potatoes.
Bell peppers being the most harmless of the nightshades.
Right.
But yes, bell peppers are still a nightshade.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Tomatoes is the big one.
Yeah.
That's the big one to avoid. And eggplant.
Yes. Yeah. And tomatoes, when I'm talking to people and they're having like pitta aggravation and, tomatoes are in a lot of different things. And before you know it, you could have several servings of tomatoes in your day. If you're having a soup with a tomato base or you're using a bolognese sauce or something, it can really quickly add up. And that's the thing I think as well, Victor, that's important to mention is accumulation over time. Because if your pitta is right at threshold at the end of summer now, and you are having your coffee every day, and you may be having tomatoes in your salad or soup or bolognese sauce, and you're having, acidic coffee, it's this accumulative effect over time, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that because the big mental idea that we were incorrectly raised with is that this food or that food is what's causing the problem. So we always want to point at some substance so that we can, wipe our hands clean and say, oh, I'm allergic to tomatoes, so I just won't eat tomatoes. But everything else is fair game.
Right.
That's actually not how the body works. The body works much more like you described, which is this threshold of a quality, not a specific substance. So what do tomatoes, coffee, garlic, eggplants, all those things have in common? They're all very acidic. And so someone may ingest one tomato, one eggplant, one cup of coffee, and have garlic in only one meal in a single day. And they say, oh my God, why am I getting acid reflux? I stopped eating gluten.
Right.
Right. But that's not how it works. What happened is they had a big buildup of acid throughout the day.
Right. And add on to that an intense workout or a stressful day at work,
Right.
Or, you get pissed off in the commute on your way home. So all that's going to aggravate pitta too, on top of the acidic foods.
Right, exactly. And that's the beauty of Ayurveda is that it's saying like, yeah, all these foods have these qualities, but let's look at the common denominator that all these foods share. And look what happens. It lines up with the quality of pitta.
Right.
So you're always working with this foundational dosha level of what's happening with your body, which deals in thresholds, because the stomach or whatever, the liver or any organ has a certain tolerance before you experience a symptom. So you can do X, Y, Z to your stomach and feel nothing. But if you want, the moment you cross over the threshold of what it's able to handle, now you're going to start having symptoms.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And so, that is exactly the way it works. It's very rare that we could pinpoint a problem to a specific food, unless someone has, like, for example, a peanut allergy.
Right.
But even that, you could probably break down to doshic level.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And this is what we love about Ayurveda. It's holistic. You have to look at every aspect of your life and see what is aggravating, in this case, that Pitta dosha. And I'd love to talk a little bit now, Victor, about the lifestyle, because I really don't think people bring that in when they're thinking that they have a Pitta imbalance. They tend to focus on food, but we really have to look towards this lifestyle. And certainly in our culture today, where we have this intensity in sporting events, I used to teach a lot of like spin classes, and I was that teacher at the top of spin class going, no pain, no gain, or, I was doing all that crazy stuff, which is really sad now. But anyway, I've learned. So, but yeah, so in this era of hot yoga, even though it's yoga, it's hot and intense and aggravating to Pitta. Endurance sports, like you can't just do a marathon now. You have to do all these endurance events and really a lot of intensity. And that's still that mindset that we have to go all out. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about this. And not only, in sports, but also in work.
Yeah, this all out mentality, like mentioned earlier, is Pittas are consciously or subconsciously in a pursuit of power.
Yeah.
And because of that pursuit and because of that interest, oftentimes they obtain power. And then via that power, they control culture.
Yeah.
And they develop a culture where people who are similar to them get rewarded. Mm. And so you develop a culture where these go all out, the more I can perform, the better, on and on, so on and so forth, mm-hmm. are the ones who win the day, so to speak, in the material world, at least.
Yeah.
And when we're young and when we're training ourselves to be a certain way, frequently, although it's sad at how often, we see young people get sick, but frequently young Pittas can handle it.
Yeah.
They might have health consequences, but they don't care yet. Mm-hmm. So, they'll just push through it. They'll just say, whatever, give me some medicine, I'll cover it up and I'll deal with it when I'm 60.
Yes, yeah.
Because now I want the house, I want the car, I want the prestige, and it's more than that. It's the pursuit of perfection. It's this, calling out to be the best at something. Mm-hmm. And the winner and the victor and all that stuff.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. And I think for Pitta, it's important to remember, less intensity, more surrendering, more moderation, more enjoyment in life. Like just, instead of marching down the beach, because you're on your 5-mile walk or whatever it is, like just put your feet in the water, get connected to nature, put your feet in the sand, go out to the trees. Not everything has to have a purpose. And I find as well that Pitta needs permission sometimes just to chill out. Like it's okay. You're not going to lose the battle if you, or lose your competitiveness, or it's not a sign of weakness if you just chill out a bit.
Yeah, actually it's a sign of strength, balanced strength. And mm-hmm. the idea of a Pitta that they're so convinced that they're right, that if they just work to their bone, that they will succeed, is actually wrong. They're not correct in that belief. The people who are successful are the ones who find some measure of balance in their life.
Yeah.
Because they have the long range ability to persist over time.
Right. Hey there, I'm going to pop in here because I want to talk a little bit about supporting you in finding that balance over time. Whether you are an aggravated Pitta or Vata or Kapha dosha, we all need help in finding balance in life. And one of the things that Ayurveda tells us is that when we're out of tune with the circadian rhythms, our internal 24-hour clock, this can lead to a lot of problems in the body and the mind. And starting October 25th, I have a discounted group, Daily Habits for a Holistic Health course. And this is where we are looking at installing a new operating system of very simple daily habits that are in tune with the 24-hour our circadian rhythm clock. And therefore, you're working with the energies of nature rather than going against them and suffering. So you get a plan and a strategy put in place on this course about how to implement these new habits that will provide a really strong foundation of holistic health for you, preventing illness, giving you energy and vitality, and making you more happy and balanced in life. And we'll also talk about the mental qualities that we mentioned in this episode that Dr. Victor and I spoke about of Rajas, Sattva, and Tamas. We go into detail on those mental qualities and look at how they become aggravated and how they show up in each of the doshas. And of course, how to pacify them and use the great qualities of these mental gunas and prevent them from becoming aggravated and affecting your body and your mind. We'll also talk about the foundations of Ayurvedic healing, which is the principle of opposites. And I want to educate you on this so you can use that in your own life and become your own healer by using your herbs and spices and food and lifestyle, and understanding how to adjust it so that you can remain in balance and again prevent illness or disease. And we finally finish up in the 4th week talking about intuition and positivity and compassion, how all these affect your health and well-being, along with how you're being in your community and in your relationships. So this, like I said, it's a 4-week, it's actually a 28-day course. You get access to a private web page on my site where there's a very short daily webinar. You'll get worksheets, you get online support, there's a private Facebook community, and this is discounted. So I'm going to put a link in the show notes. If you're interested in this course, you'll see testimonials there from people who have gone through it and have really found it helpful. And you can also visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com. Just click on the events tab and you'll see the group Daily Habits for Holistic Health course there. So I hope you can join us. This is a course that will really support you on the path to finding balance and to understanding and empowering yourself on how to take charge of your own health. So check it out. Okay, let's get back to the conversation with Dr. Victor. Right. And you can work better with others because we're talking about that sharp tongue earlier. If you're in a working environment and you're Pitta, you're burned out and you're pushing, you're a bear to work with. And also people will not react well because of that sharpness that we talked about earlier, but also you won't be as effective.
Yeah. And I think this is a good time to bring in a quality of Pitta because it's what Pittas need to strive for, which is an Ayurvedic term called tejas.
Yes. Yeah.
Tejas is a very refined quality of the Pitta dosha. So it's Pitta at its honest best as opposed to just, the burn and churn best. Mm-hmm. And this Teja, its essence is that it's this kind of divine focus of Pitta. Mm. Which is to use all these Pitta capacities to, like you said, bring people together, right, and to change the dynamics of the world that are dragging people apart and creating things that take people down. Mm-hmm. So Pittas have this amazing capacity to hone in on and see through change. Yep. And if they can get in touch with their tejas, which is their highest focus, which is going to incorporate some aspect of service,
yes,
then they can, in a balanced way, use all their capacities to rejuvenate as opposed to destruct relationships.
I love that. Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up. And I think it's so important for all of us, and particularly for Pitta, is this act of service, that giving to others and getting outside of the self.
Yeah. So if you take, a CEO who is just using that Pitta drive and it's all about dominance and staying on top and, just making sure that, the company gets quarterly profit and I'll do whatever I have to do to make sure that we get quarterly profit. That's going to be the negative aspect of using all that Pitta energy. Mm-hmm. Whereas the positive aspect of using all that Pitta energy is a CEO who has this higher vision and is so focused on that higher vision that they're not going to get distracted.
Right.
And they bring people together to achieve that higher purpose.
Fantastic. I see it a lot at the end of the Pitta stage of life, where it's, menopause for women and andropause for men. And there's this shift because you're coming to the end of this drive, this Pitta stage of life where it's all about focus on family and focus on material stuff. And it's all about production. And now you're going more into the wisdom stage of life. And there's this kind of dance as you're in between those stages, around the 50s, and there's more of a want to softening. However, this Pitta, and I would say even the ego, is holding on to this way you've always been, and there's almost this fear of letting go of that. And I've seen these people who have been very powerful in the Pitta stage of life, and now some more empathy and compassion coming in and wanting to be of more service in the world and thinking about their legacy and what, thinking about what they want their future to be and what they want to leave behind for their family and so on.
Yeah, definitely. And it is a beautiful process to watch Pitta mentor another younger Pitta, a Pitta phase that you're talking about, mentor another Pitta, because it is possible for Pittas at a age to grasp that. And that often comes in the way of a teaching from a Pitta who's been through the, kind of down negative side of Pitta and realize that that's not where it's at.
Yeah, because like we said, every dosha, they have these amazing qualities, but it's any time we go too far, and especially for Pitta, it's just the enjoyment goes out of life, and there's just this pursuit of power that can come in if it really becomes aggravated, and that just takes any enjoyment out. And then there's years down the line where you look up and it's like, well, I've been in this warp of this pursuit of power or wealth or whatever it was for the past few years, and you're missing out on the simple, beautiful things in life.
Yeah, the things that will bring legitimate balance and happiness.
Right, exactly.
And health.
Yes, absolutely. So to bring more tejas in through mindfulness as well, right, as well as acts of service?
Acts of service are a big deal for Pitta. Yeah. Because it takes them outside of their own ego construct. Right. Pittas are constantly trying to perfect, which creates a self-obsession. And not healthy. Yeah. And it takes them out of that, and then they get to use all their wonderful capacities to help someone else pick up their life in whatever way that they're going to serve. Right.
And they have so much to offer because they're so organized, and they can really help others, don't have that Pitta skill set, and do so much good in the world.
Without Pittas, this world would be a dark place. Pittas are the light that can come in and take something that's beautiful and really make it happen. Yeah. And so they don't want to leave things in the realm of ideas like Vatas like to. They want to say, okay, that's a great idea. Now let's manifest it. Right. And Vatas, I'll scare a Vata a lot of times. Yeah. Right. Cause
what you should do? You should do this, this, and this.
Yeah, exactly. Commitment in Vata is like, it's like oil and water. Right. But without that Pitta drive and quality, the world would be a very unhappy place to live in.
Well, and that's a lovely place to leave it. We'll leave it on a positive note, because I know we had a little laugh at the expense of Pitta, but I've definitely been there and seen a lot of these characteristics in myself, and have come through the other side, but still have to work on it, right? Still, that's the great thing about Ayurveda. Once you do that self-study and learn yourself, you can see those tendencies rise up, and you can see that Pitta creeping up, and then you can catch it early by making changes to your diet and lifestyle so it doesn't go above threshold, which is the secret, right, in Ayurveda, is understanding yourself so that you can keep that balance.
Yeah, we are our own healer. That is the ultimate goal of every Ayurvedic professional, is to basically leave a person with a way that they can balance themselves.
Yeah, and that's what I love. It's all about empowering each person, all of our clients, with the knowledge, to go out there and take charge of their own health, which is what we want for everybody.
We would definitely love that for everybody. No question about that.
Great. Well, this was a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it, Victor. Is there any other bits of wisdom you'd like to leave us with today? And also I'd like to ask you to repeat again where people can find you and your offerings. That would be wonderful.
I think we've gone through a lot of good wisdom. Of course, there's always more, but we can always do another podcast.
Great.
And people can, I'm with Pacific Coast Ayurveda. That's a Ayurvedic clinic in Walla, California. And Walla, California is about 3 hours north of San Francisco, northwest of San Francisco on the coast. It's a very beautiful place. Pacific Coast Ayurveda is part of a group of other businesses that deal with yogic philosophies, counselings, and application in life. And there's a whole climate section that ties into this about trying to deal with all the climate change we're experiencing in our world. And that grouping is called the Center for Applied Consciousness. You can always call us 707-225-8844. And my email is victor@pcayurveda.com.
Wonderful.
That's how you can reach us. And if you're a Pitta who's having Pitta aggravation, then give us a call.
Great. That sounds wonderful. And I will put all those links in the show notes over to Victor and all the folks at PC Ayurveda and the Center for Applied Consciousness, which is just a wonderful team of healers that have come together and pooling their resources together and collaborating versus competition, which I love. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I think that's the way forward in business.
Yeah, definitely, especially during these times.
Yeah, absolutely. Victor, a pleasure as always. And thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really enjoyed this conversation. And again, it's perfect timing this time of year, end of summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, that people can take those tips and just check in if they have a little bit of Pitta over threshold going on.
Yes, and thank you, Colette, for having me again. And I look forward to the next one.
Lovely. Thanks a million, Victor. Take good care of yourself.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Ayurvedic Doctor Victor Briere. Some really great tips and insights into Pitta Burnout. So please check out all the links in the show notes for Victor's contact details and to see their current offerings over at PC Ayurveda as well. Don't forget that I have that Daily Habits for Holistic Health course coming up. It's the online course, 28 days, and it is starting October 25th. So check out all the details in the show notes or visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com, and just click on the events tab and you'll see the group Daily Habits course there. If you think this episode will help some friends or family, please feel free to share it with them and we'll get this wisdom of Ayurveda out there. And thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. Take good care, be well, and ciao for now.